Well, hello and welcome to another video by Financial Ernie. On today's video, we're going to be talking about IREN, that is Iris Energy Company. We're going to discuss a press release they put out on January 21st in regards to a $1 billion at the market offering. And we're going to talk about exactly what that money is going to be utilized for. They also give us an update of some of their activities they have planned for the second half of 2025. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, taking a look at this press release. Again, this is from January 21st. They discuss first off, their main highlight is 57 exahash per second is planned for the second half of 2025, as well as some direct to chip liquid cooling. So it has a little bit to do with some of that high performance computing. And then they talk a little bit about one of their larger power projects for a 1.4 gigawatt Sweetwater project and their multi gigawatt pipeline. So, jumping into some of the information, some investors may have been caught off guard with the announcement of this $1 billion at the market offering, but IREN did go through and provide quite a lot of updates on their forward guidance and what they plan to utilize this capital for. They also did a calculation of what type of value this specific amount of at the market offering would provide for shareholders. So, jumping into that, we're going to start with that first highlight. So, key highlights number one, expansion. Expanding that capacity to 57 exahash per second for second half of 2025. And they mentioned that they are still on track for the first half of 2025, hitting that 50 exahash per second mark. Looking at that number two highlight, they are talking about initiating direct to chip liquid cooling systems. And they talk about some of the customers or some of the chips that they do plan on doing with that. We'll go into the details as we continue on. But again, this is going to be utilized in some of their existing data centers in order to get that rapid scaling for cloud and co-location opportunities. And third highlight is going to be their advancing of construction for that Sweetwater location, including that 1.4 gigawatt of substation and some of their electrical build out. And they are targeting to have that done in the first half of 2026. And then the last highlight that they plan to use this at the market offering for is going to be progressing their multi gigawatt data center development pipeline. So they talked a little bit about how they plan to enhance that. Acquiring additional land, as well as how they plan to utilize this money for some of the infrastructure for that power. So, jumping down into the next section here, let's go over that key highlight number one. This is that 57 exahash per second. So looking at that, and Myron did a great job of providing a breakdown of how this exahash is going to be leveraged and justifying it with looking at this EBITDA. So looking at the current Bitcoin price around $100,000, that's what the company is utilizing in order to calculate this EBITDA. They are saying that at 50 exahash per second, they will have an EBITDA of 716 million. And then with a 57 exahash per second, that EBITDA should grow to 826 million. And they mention exactly how they plan to do this expansion. They say it's due to this final construction of 100 megawatts at their Childress location, which would completely build out this 750 megawatt data center project for the end of 2025. And then they mentioned that they do believe that this build out will help enhance IREN's cost as far as operating cash flows and further reduce its already industry leading production cost. So, how exactly are they going to do that? They give you a couple of bullets here as well. So, additional economies of scale. So, by reducing their unit costs of production through amortizing overhead. So, basically, they're going to be utilizing their staff a little bit more efficient in order to be able to reduce some of that overhead cost in order to scale up that revenue. Looking at number two, their operational excellence. Again, optimizing uptime and profitability for their Bitcoin mining production. And number three, looking at that low power cost. So this is very important for all these Bitcoin miners. They need to maintain a very low cost of power because that is one of the main components in the cost of mining this Bitcoin, besides those miners, of course. But looking at that cost to mine, they currently have 2.8 cents per kilowatt hour at that childress location. And they've been successfully transitioning to spot pricing. They do give a detail down below. You can read through that, or you can pause once we get there. But basically, when they mention spot pricing, they're not talking about Bitcoin pricing. They're talking about spot pricing for electricity. So they are able to negotiate on a month-to-month basis in order to try to maintain as low of power costs as possible. In the last part of this upgrading to 57 exahash per second is going after this fleet efficiency. So their current fleet efficiency is less than 15 joules per terahash. And a lot of that has to do with their exercise of some of their purchase options for these S21 Pro miners and the latest gen of this S21 XP miner. So you can see here those S21 Pros, they have a potential hash rate of 11 exahash per second, and these S21s are at 8 exahash per second. So that is an excellent amount of additional exahash that they do plan. And because these specific miners are very efficient, the efficiency number combined with the amount of exahash per second you're going to get out of these miners does provide them with, again, a low cost of mining Bitcoin. Going into highlight number two, these are the details behind the liquid cooling in existing data centers. So it says IREN is advancing the design of direct to chip closed loop liquid cooling systems across its existing data centers. Bitcoin mining remains their core business. However, they are obviously expanding into the HPC and the AI sectors. So, with the release of this liquid cooled NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs in 2025, and as well as some growing demand for scarce liquid cooled data center capacity, IREN is exploring the potential opportunity to replace their Bitcoin miners with liquid cooled GPUs under cloud or colocation service contracts in some of its data centers. So they are going to be repurposing some of their data centers in order to be able to bring in some of this HPC work, specifically for these NVIDIA GPUs. Looking down a little bit further, you're going to see some initial installations. They're going to focus in their Prince George as well as that Childress location, with some additional design and planning already underway to accommodate these liquid cooled GPUs across multiple IREN data centers. So they're looking to have a total megawatt or total power support of 910 megawatts by the end of 2025. And as part of this initiative, and to support the ongoing dialogue with the prospective customers, they have procurement underway for these key liquid cooling infrastructure. So they talk a little bit about what's included in the infrastructure, some of the packaged chiller plant, these chillers, dry coolers, and some coolant distribution units, as well as some UPS and diesel generator backup systems to enhance operational resilience. So that is definitely something that's important, is that uptime. When you do have some of these data centers coming online, you cannot risk having any type of power fluctuations. So getting that UPS downloaded as that battery backup, as well as having this diesel generator installed, those are going to be key things that they can use when they pitch to these customers on why the customer should trust them with that data center. Going into number three on the list of their key highlights. This is that Sweetwater data center project for 1.4 gigawatts. And if you're wondering, they've been using 1400 megawatts, but I'm just doing the conversion to gigawatts. The Sweetwater data center project is a highly strategic asset for IREN, offering unique scale with 1.4 gigawatts of grid connected power. And they have it scheduled for energization sorry, by April 2026. And here's some other updates for the construction progress. They go into rather a large amount of detail on their progress here. So they talk about some of the substation procurement activities. I'm not going to go through every single one of these. They're talking about transformers, circuit breakers, and some other auxiliary type of equipment that they're utilizing. But let's jump down to the next section. They're engaging leading EPC contractors to help out with some of that substation design, as well as some of that construction that they do plan to start in early 2025. So we should be hearing some additional updates via press release in the months to come for IREN when it comes to this Sweetwater data center construction progress. Looking at that third bullet, talking about the general site works, again, they're just talking about some of this initial construction, some of the infrastructure, as well as some of the roads, office space, warehouse. So basically, some of the buildings and some of the streets that are going to be necessary to be able to access this specific data center. And then the last section is just talks about civil works. So they're talking about kind of commencing some of, potentially some of the permits and different preparations on that end to prepare for that construction. Looking down into number 4 on their list of highlights, this is new development sites. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how much detail they provide here. So it says IREN's experienced internal data center development team continues to provide a competitive advantage, driving substantial value creation with no reliance on a merger and acquisition for growth. This is increasingly critical as data center demand surges and grid connection timelines lengthen. So as there's more and more demand for these data centers, power is going to become really the bottleneck. Looking at that second paragraph, the company has received multiple proposals valuing assets in its development portfolio at many times its costs, underscoring the potential value in developing greenfield sites internally. So basically, they're saying they've been solicited multiple times for their assets. And this is just based off of the value they bring because of the low costs and the potential value that they do have. Looking at the last section here, IREN remains focused on securing land and negotiating new grid interconnection agreements to support additional development sites, further strengthening its position in the expanding data center landscape with a multi gigawatt development pipeline and a focus on large power capacity sites. IREN is well positioned for future growth across a range of potential data center and use cases. And as I mentioned, if you do want to read through a little bit of these assumptions, this is how they calculate that EBITDA value. And then also they talk a little bit about that spot power pricing that they mentioned in terms of how they do this by a month-to-month basis. I'm going to jump past the forward-looking statements. And again, at the very end of this thing, I thought it was worth highlighting. They do talk a little bit more about IREN as a company, some of their key highlights when they started mining back in 2019, when they started their AI cloud services in 2024, and when they started constructing these next generation data centers. And they do have plans to go from 510 megawatts to 910 megawatts in 2025. Talk a little bit about that technology stack with both AI cloud services and the Bitcoin mining. And then they just talk about their overall development portfolio. They have 2.3 gigawatts of grid connected power across North America. So that is pretty impressive for one of these Bitcoin mining companies. And the last section, they talk about the renewable energy with specific sites. They're targeting for low cost and underutilized renewable energy. So again, that's a great way to be able to bridge that gap. So whenever there is a surge in renewable energy, maybe some of the solar sites have some excess power throughout the day, Auren will be looking for opportunity to be able to jump in and get that 100% renewable energy at a lower rate. All right, and that wraps it up for me, folks. I hope you enjoyed this quick update on IREN. Hopefully, you understand a little bit more about what that $1 billion at the market offering is going to be utilized for. We also got some good forward guidance for IREN for the second half of 2025, as well as some of the construction updates and estimates going into 2026. So if you like this update, please consider giving this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, drop a comment. What do you think about IREN? What do you think about this at the market offering? Do you think it is valid? Do you think that they're going to be able to utilize it to bring more value to shareholders compared to the amount of dilution coming? And with all that said, hope you all have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you on the next one.